President Donald Trump has announced the United States' intention to reclaim Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, signaling a potential shift in U.S. foreign policy for the region. Speaking on September 21, 2025, President Trump stated that the U.S. is prepared to re-enter Afghanistan, either easily or by force, to secure the strategically vital base located north of Kabul. Bagram served as a major logistical hub for the U.S. military for 2 decades during the war in Afghanistan, a conflict that Trump characterized as a significant loss for the United States. His rationale for demanding the base's return centers on the assertion that the U.S. relinquished Bagram too easily to the Afghan government, a claim that contradicts historical accounts of the withdrawal. President Trump articulated a primary concern that the base's current status presents a narrow way for the Afghan government to potentially acquire nuclear weapons, citing the proximity of Chinese main laboratories and nuclear facilities merely hundreds of miles away. However, the president's deeper underlying motive, as widely interpreted, is to counter and monitor China's growing influence in the region, using the threat of nuclear proliferation as a coded justification for forceful intervention. The strategic vocabulary of nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction has historically preceded U.S. military actions in other countries, often leading to destructive outcomes. The Taliban government, which now controls Afghanistan, has vehemently rejected any notion of a U.S. military return, asserting that while dialogue is possible, no foreign military presence will be tolerated on their soil. President Trump, however, maintains that the Taliban needs the U.S. due to their prolonged isolation, a claim that overlooks the extensive destruction and sanctions imposed on Afghanistan by the U.S. over 2 decades, raising questions about why the Afghan people would welcome back the very power that inflicted such hardship. The president's declared intention to re-establish a military presence at Bagram Air Base marked a significant departure from the previous administration's withdrawal and reflects a renewed focus on strategic competition with China in Central Asia. For 2 decades, Bagram was the cornerstone of U.S. military operations in Afghanistan, facilitating everything from counterterrorism missions to logistical support for coalition forces. Its abandonment during the 2021 withdrawal was a symbol of the U.S. disengagement from a protracted conflict. President Trump's desire to reclaim it, therefore, is not merely about a military installation, but about projecting American power and influence in a region where China has steadily expanded its economic and political footprint. The argument regarding the potential for Afghanistan to acquire nuclear weapons, while presented as a national security imperative, is widely perceived as a diplomatic maneuver to justify a more aggressive posture. The U.S. has a long history of using concerns about weapons of mass destruction to build public and international support for military intervention. By linking the presence of Chinese nuclear facilities to Afghanistan's proximity, President Trump aims to create a compelling narrative for intervention, even as the direct threat of the Taliban acquiring nuclear weapon is widely considered to be low by intelligence analysts. This strategy allowed the administration to frame its action as preventive and protective rather than overtly confrontational regarding China. The Taliban's unequivocal rejections of a U.S. military return poses a significant challenge to President Trump's declared objective. Having fought for 2 decades to oust foreign forces, the Taliban views any attempt at re-entry as a violation of Afghanistan's sovereignty and a direct affront to their hard-won independence. Their willingness to engage in dialogue but not tolerate military presence sets a clear boundary that, if crossed, would likely lead to renewed armed conflict. This presents a complex dilemma for the U.S. administration, as a forced re-entry into Afghanistan would necessitate another military campaign, potentially mirroring the costly and unpopular war that the U.S. only recently concluded. President Trump's assertion that the Taliban need the U.S. because they have been living in isolation for too long is a contentious claim, ignoring the historical context of U.S. involvement. It was the U.S. and its allies that imposed severe sanctions and largely isolated Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover, creating the very conditions of isolation that President Trump now cited as a reason for re-engagement. This circular reasoning highlights the enduring complexity and contradiction in U.S.-Afghan relations, while the impact of past intervention continues to shape present-day dynamics. The broader implications of President Trump's stance on Bagram extend beyond Afghanistan's border, resonating across the global geopolitical landscape. A forceful re-entry into Afghanistan would not only destabilize an already fragile region, but also send a strong signal to other nations about the U.S. willingness to unilaterally disregard international norms and sovereignty in pursuit of its strategic interests. Such an action would undoubtedly draw criticism from allies and adversaries alike, potentially isolating the United States on the world stage. Furthermore, a renewed military presence in Afghanistan would inevitably reignite the debate about the true cost and benefit of perpetual military engagement in distant lands, particularly after a withdrawal that was widely supported by the American public. The narrative of countering China's influence, while a legitimate strategic concern for the U.S., risk overshadowing the immediate human and political consequences of another military intervention in Afghanistan. The ultimate success or failure of President Trump's ambition to reclaim Bagram Air Base, whether by diplomatic means or by force, will have profound consequences for the future of U.S. foreign policy, regional stability in Central Asia, and the ongoing competition between global powers. The coming months will reveal the true extent of the administration's commitment to this controversial objective and its willingness to bear the inevitable costs. If you have made it this far, congratulations. You have unlocked the truth. I want to ask you a question. Given President Trump's stated intention to reclaim Bagram Air Base, potentially by force, and the Taliban's outright rejection of any foreign military presence, do you foresee a successful diplomatic negotiation? Join the debate and share your analysis in the comments. Join the debate and share your analysis in the comment. Like the video, and most importantly, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.